Hello guys, welcome to another virtual biology lesson. And today we're going to continue the topic of biological diversity. And we're going to focus on what impact on biological diversity people have. And undoubtedly that impact is really huge. Some scientists say that humans have caused the next massive extinction of animals, and personally, I have to agree with this. There are a few reasons why we eliminate some species, whether we do it on purpose or we just do it unconsciously because we exploit the natural resources so much that they aren't able to renew. And guys, reasons for eliminating organisms can be listed as following. Eliminating species or just organisms. Uh, the one of them is collecting. Many people just collect specimen of specific species, and if it just happens to most common species, then nothing really happens. I'm talking about plants, I'm talking about insects, but also some of the animals, which are then stuffed and exposed in the museums or in private collections. But if it touches the rarest species, then even that one individual being taken away from natural habitat might lead to problems with continuity of the species. Also, guys, hunting. Like people are hunting for animals, especially in the countries with bigger population, and it really led to extinction of many species, such as European bisons. They have been continued, they have been protected by scientists, but still their population has been heavily destroyed. The same thing applies to fishing. We like fish. Fish are very valuable food, but still we fish so much that sometimes, in some cases, the natural mechanisms of balancing the population of certain species just don't have enough time to renew their population. So this is all about sustainability, which means taking from the environment, but taking a look at the balance so we don't take too much so the natural balance can be held. And guys, the worst part that is touching the rarest species, the rarest animals is poaching, kłusownictwo. This happens in Africa, this happens in Asia, where we have the natural huge diversity of species. Some of them are really valuable, some of them are being illegally killed just to have, because some people have money and they really want to have like that skin of that crocodile, or they need to have shoes made of really rare snake skin. So this is one of the most cruel and one of the most dangerous for the uh, environment. But also, what is not helping the species at all is the general pollution. Because pollution, as such, leads to destroying natural habitats. We have learned that some of species of lichens can be used as bioindicators, which means that if we reach a certain concentration of pollution in the air, for instance, then they will disappear, and it indeed happened. And guys, the of atmosphere, pollution of air. There are two sources, main sources of pollution. There are natural ones, such as volcano explosions, all the sulfur and nitrogen compounds, also carbon dioxide. They come from natural sources indeed. So if there is a huge volcano eruption, then yes, indeed, many of those gases will be thrown into the atmosphere, uh, and this is not really beneficial for the life, but in general, in global scale, the nature is capable of balancing for this. So natural mechanisms of holding this balance will kick in. But there are also many sources of pollution that happen because of humans. So we have the industry. We have to warm up our houses. So this also emits lots of pollution into the atmosphere. We have the industry, we have also agriculture, we have animals that we have to feed, so we need more plants, to more area for plants to exploit. And guys, there are a few consequences of air pollution, such as acid rains. When we emit too much sulfur compounds into the atmosphere, the acids will be created in the atmosphere. The chemical reactions will take place, and the pH of the precipitation will fall down into slightly more acidic. But just that slight change is capable of destroying whole areas of forests, for instance, because plants, some of the species in general, are very sensitive to changes. Their biological tolerance is really low. Not only it destroys the trees, but it also the acid rains destroy the soil, making it more acidic. So fewer and fewer species of plants are capable of surviving in those conditions. And basically, if the whole forest is being destroyed, then animals that used to live in it, they have no shelter, so their natural habitat is destroyed. What we did, and what is a huge success of international cooperation, is the ozone layer hole. It turned out that due to emission of some specific chemical compounds called freons, which were used in deodorants, all the sprays that we have, and also cooling engines like refrigerators and air conditioning units. Those gases started to destroy the ozone layer. Ozone layer is a layer of atmosphere that is located around 30 kilometers above our head, and there is a huge concentration of ozone, which is, I hope that you know this from chemistry, usually oxygen is made out of two atoms, sorry. But ozone is a specific form of oxygen where we have three of them bound together. This is a very reactive compound, and it's absolutely necessary for us for the survival of the whole life, because it turns out that it's blocking the UV light coming directly from the sun, and the UV light is very destructive. It causes cancer, it destroys cells, it destroys life in general. UV light is being used to disinfect to disinfect spaces, to disinfect water, for instance. But if we are exposed to UV light, especially some particular wavelengths of UV light, then basically our tissues are being destroyed. And what happened with the ozone layer, that due to the emissions of freons, it was destroyed. The layer started to be thinner and thinner due to agreement. Due to agreement in between countries, we have agreed that we will stop using those chemicals, and it indeed brings the ozone layer back to its shape. It's getting more thicker and thicker, and to 2050, it is estimated that it will renew completely. We also have the problem with smog, which I told you a little bit about. We have two kinds of smoke. We have the acidic London type smoke, which basically is caused mostly by individual home furnaces. So when you're burning coal, you're burning garbage, all the stuff, you emit lots of carbon dioxide and sulfur compounds. We also have a smog that is so-called the Los Angeles type or photochemical smoke, which happens in summer, and it's caused mostly by traffic and by industry. Of course, we have the global warming, climate change in general. It turns out that we emit so much carbon dioxide and we have adapted the carbon. Do you remember the lesson when we were talking about the matter that is constantly circulating? We have talked a little bit about carbon dioxide, and this is what happened. We started using fuel. So lots and lots of carbon that was stored under the ground. It was kept safe for millions of years. So some amount of carbon was somehow frozen from the circulation, and now we started digging it out and letting it go into the atmosphere. So this causes the abruption to the carbon cycle. And carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, which means that huge emissions of this can result in the average temperature on Earth rising, and this is a problem because the warmer it is, the more the more glaciers will melt, and if the glaciers will melt, then the level of global ocean will rise. And basically, I have told you the whole mechanism. The higher level of sea, then it will mean that the more and more fields will be salty because of the groundwaters that will become contaminated with seawater. So we will lose many grounds that we could have planted our food on it. Another example of destroying habitats is the pollution of water. And guys, of course, we have all the junk that is coming right into rivers. So the chemical pollution, the sewage that we just drop into the water, uh, and also the fertilizers. So a load of nitrogen, a load of phosphorus is being released into surface waters that causes some specific species of plants to overgrow. So they start to grow so quickly and so rapidly that they take out all the nutrients. They block the access of sunlight, blocking the photosynthesis in the deeper parts of bodies of water, and that is causing the collapsing of many various ecosystems. We also have heavy metals such as lead, cadmium and others that are being released. They are highly poisonous, so they destroy, so they basically hurt animals, aquatic animals. But we also have something that we never think of, which is the thermal pollution. Thermal pollution might occur in the neighborhood of power plants. So power plants, they use water to cool down the machinery. And what they do is basically they take some water. Let's draw this. Here we have a power plant. We have a river. And what they do is they take some water from the river to the power plant where in closed circuit, so it doesn't have any contact with machinery and all the garbage that can be found, the chemical garbage that can be found in it. So it's being circulated. The machinery is cooled down, and then the water is being dropped back again to the river. But what is happening? They drop clean water because chemically speaking, the chemical composition is not changed at all, but it's warmer. And it happens that uh, oxygen that is absolutely necessary for life to sprout in water dissolves uh, much the capability of water to dissolve oxygen drops when it's warmer. So it looks like this. Concentration of oxygen, and we have temperature. So it drops like this. When we have a lower temperature, we might have more oxygen. When the temperature is getting higher, we have less oxygen, and that causes the collapsing of of aquatic ecosystems, but also soil degradation. Over fertilizing. So using too much of artificial fertilizers that basically destroy the natural properties, usually the soil, the humus is rich in many various chemical compounds, depending on the region, depending on climate and bedrock that is below it. But it turns out that if you use too much of fertilizers, then it just starts to be rich in those two, nitrogen and phosphorus, and that's it. So over time, it gets more and more worn out, and less plants are able to survive. Then what we do is we draining, draining, sorry for this, draining swamps. If we want to obtain a piece of land for building, for agriculture, then we have plenty of swamps, of places where the water just stands naturally. So we build drains, we take the water out of it, and what we basically destroy the habitat, and all the species that were adapted to live in those certain circumstances, they are just gone. Monocultures. This is what happens in Amazon rainforest, for instance, right now, when the rich and diverse tropical rainforest is being destroyed to get some land in order to start a monoculture. So this is a type of agriculture that we plant only one certain type of plants. In Amazon rainforest, what is happening right now, we start to plant oil palms to get palm oil. So this is really, we are destroying habitats of orangutans, for instance, because we destroy their homes in order to plant more and more of oil palms. In Uganda, in Africa, they are destroying the rainforest because they want to plant more and more bananas. Basically, we are destroying a home of hundreds of thousands of species in order to make space for to create a home for only one species. That is not good, and this is definitely abrupting the natural diversity. Uh, what else? Burning meadows. Some farmers just burn it down in order not to just mow it. What is happening when you burn a meadow or burn the whole area or the grassland? You basically burn everything, including animals, including earthworms, including tiny bugs that create the soil because they are decomposers. And when you burn all of them, then basically you have nobody to create that soil for you. Soil is not dead. Soil is absolutely a life organism. It's a living organism that needs to work. If we burn it all, then we end up with only sand and some dead remains. So, guys, basically, what is also very destructive for the biological diversity are the foreign species, introducing of foreign species. I have been telling you a little bit about it. I hope that you remember about this action of ecologists that have mm, released American minks, Norki, uh, from uh, from the places where they were held for furs. And what they did is basically they released them into the wild, so in order to save their lives. But it turns out that it's a foreign species, and our European minks they didn't survive because American minks are much better adapted, and they are much more dangerous. So they have basically taken the ecological niche of European minks. So. I'm leaving it up to you to judge whether the releasing all the minks to save them from being killed for first was a good idea or not in general. The same case, guys, was with carp. So let me write it down. Minks, American. The same thing was with carp. Carp was introduced into Poland in 60s and 70s due to the shortage of fish. And it's a freshwater fish, and it's very it's an herbivore, but it's just so hungry that it keeps eating all the plants in freshwater bodies of water. So as a result, other species don't have anything to eat, so basically they go extinct. Another case, maybe you heard about it, was the plant that you have on page 149. Just take a look at it. And this is a really mean plant. This is the Sosnowski hogweed. Po polsku barszcz sosnowskiego. It was basically introduced by Soviet scientists that have tried to combine existing species of hogweed in order to create a super hogweed that will be capable of feeding cattle. But what turned out that cows started to suffer after eating this because hogweed is basically related to celery, and all the plants that are from the family of celery and the neighboring ones, they protect themselves from being eaten by producing some kind of venom. And it turned out that Soviet scientists basically created a super hogweed that contains most of the venom. It's so dangerous that even passing by this plant on a sunny day is dangerous because it leaves a tiny droplets of this venom on your skin that are carried by the wind, and when it's exposed to UV light, it causes some very awful burns. And this is also an invasive species. Unfortunately, it was introduced to Poland as well, so from time to time we hear about people being burned by it, especially in places, in wild places, and especially in the summer. And unfortunately, it's really huge. It's easy to notice it from far away, and you have to. I would encourage you to get acquainted with what it looks like, and you should know to avoid it and never ever to touch it. It's really invasive. Actually, there are some phone numbers you can call to just tell them that it started growing in here because getting rid of it is a huge action. Okay, guys, so this is it for now. Please check the assignment page. There will be something waiting for you. And guys, take care.